So, in 2021,
okay,
I've gone back to there
it's
3 times now.
We're going.
We're gonna
all
get
over
there.
the place.
It's on the back of a turtle, but we're gonna get there.
That's how these interviews go. They just, they're not very linear, which is fine.
Anyway, so I was super depressed, and
that's right. You were talking about like giving up on activism and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just like, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
I don't know what am I doing with myself, and I started writing a story. I started writing a long serial fiction.
Okay.
And the point of writing this was like, there are sort of multiple points of writing it, but one of the points of writing it was to sort of find my way back into activism again, like figuring out for myself, how am I going to get back into activism?
Okay.
And basically I've
in like a different kind of way, or
yeah, like here I am. I'm in this small town where I didn't know anybody except my own family.
And where was that?
Here in Walla Walla.
Okay.
I know my family.
Yeah.
And on top of everything else, there's the pandemic, so I was super isolated.
Right.
And there's all this horrible stuff going on in the outside world, and I feel powerless to do anything about it.
Right.
And I've just given up my only tool that I had to do anything about it.
Well, the pandemic stopped a lot.
It did.
And it still has so many effects. Like, lots of businesses are going under, like a lot of gay bars, for instance. Meeting places and whatnot. They're just going under. They just, they took out loans and they just can't pay them back.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Yeah, so with all of that, what I kind of decided to do was to let the fictional characters teach me how to get back on my feet.
Ooh, I like that.
And
I like that. I like that. I heard about an artist who took on various personalities so that he could make different kinds of art. Like like, I am avant-garde in this particular way or whatever. And then he would make like different kinds of art. And then the next year he would take on kind of another persona and make a different kind of art. Anyway, that kind of reminds me.
That sounds very David Bowie.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Yeah, there's that too. There's a lot of artists that do that.
So in my story, I've jokingly been calling it my fake fan fiction, which kind of bugs my daughter-in-law. She's like, you're selling yourself too short. But it's a fake fan fiction because I wrote it as if I was the self-insert character is like, quote unquote, from our world.
Okay.
Right?
Are you choosing your own adventure here?
Sort of. Yeah. So the self-insert is from our world.
Sure.
And they're really into this comic book world that they've been reading.
Okay.
And they basically have gone through all the sorts of things that I've gone through, and they want to, through meditation, go talk to these comic book characters.
Okay.
And like they'll train me, and I'll figure out how to do stuff.
Okay.
And so
I always think it's interesting, at least recently, that there's this kind of superhero thing going on, like with the movies. Like almost, I gotta say, I'm kind of tired of it because it requires more than what's human in order to fix things, which I don't know if that's actually a good message. Like more strength than is humanly possible, or whatever. I mean,
spoilers.
Okay.
I don't know what
my friend here is talking about.
Part of the point of my story
is
actually that none of the things that these superheroes did necessitated their special powers.
Okay.
The special powers were just a bonus, and that's kind of like the lesson through the whole thing.
So everything they did,
they could have
regular person could do.
Right.
Okay, great.
And
that's where that
a lot of the
everybody rising up and doing something comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the story is about how you can do all the things that they did without being superhuman.
Yes.
that you just have to be human and do cooperation and finding other people and
being kind, listening.
Yeah. So the sort of second main character in this book is named Morrison because of Grant Morrison. So Grant Morrison is a comic book writer.
Okay. That's why I don't know.
Right. But one of the things he's famous for is a lecture that he gave at the 2000 Disinfo conference. Okay. About magic.
Okay.
And chaos magic.
Is that like an anarchist conference or something?
Is it? I don't know if it ever happened more than once. Okay. But it
was just a special event, like, boom, let's do this.
There was like a publishing company, I don't know if they even still exist, called Disinfo.
Okay.
And
so they kind of sponsored it and had speakers. Okay, all right. Okay.
So one of the things that he talks about in his lecture was how this one famous comic book series that he wrote called The Invisibles was actually a sigil, a very complex sigil to make changes in his own life.
Okay.
And he talks...
What is sigil?
A sigil is a magical symbol that you put intent and your ideas into. Okay. And then kind of put it away from you so that it will happen in the world. Okay. There are different techniques for like making...
just radiating out.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So there are different techniques for making sigils that are really simple. But to make a whole comic book series is a pretty complex sort of sigil, right? So I named this major character in the story after him because, for one thing, he's a sorcerer, but also because the whole work is, in a way, kind of the same project, a sort of sigil to both change parts of my own life, by sort of self-therapy, talking my way through my own stuff in fiction.
By making this...
by creating the fiction.
The fiction,
right? By working stuff out in fiction.
Were you also drawing too, like it's a comic?
I wish.
Okay.
If I had
Get your kids to do it.
If I had any drawing skill whatsoever, but I am... I'm face blind.
It's okay. You don't need to know. Don't need to do more.
Yeah, I'm face blind, so I literally can't draw people at all.
Okay, I understand. I'm a sculptor, so the intricacies of the face fascinate me. So anyway,
I
love faces.
So
I am the opposite of you. I'm not face blind. In fact, I remember faces forever.
I wish. It's a huge point of anxiety when I'm seeing people out.
Do people think you're rude sometimes?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible. Yes.
And the thing is, for years I've said...
it's an actual disability.
Yeah.
Some people call it, think of it as a disability.
For years I said, I'm not really face blind, I'm face blurry. Because obviously I can recognize my children. And it wasn't until very recently when I had a situation when I literally did not recognize my daughter-in-law, who I've been living in the same house with for 4 years. Okay. I was like... So the problem was, it was not a context where I expected to see her.
Oh, I understand, yeah.
And so... all of the other pieces,
and you probably had some business to do, like you were
right, and I'm like staring straight at her and thinking, wow, that's funny, that dress looks just like my daughter-in-law's dress, her hair looks a lot like my daughter-in-law's hair. Wow. And then I hear her voice and I'm like, wow, that's my daughter-in-law's voice.
Wow, it's amazing that that realization was coming in layers. And, yeah.
And I'm literally staring right at her and not recognizing her at all. And she's like, yeah, I knew you weren't just face blurry.
I kind of do that with naivete. Like, I'm kind of naive sometimes, and then I'm like, oh, I kind of noticed this is going on. Oh, this other thing is going on. Oh, maybe this situation isn't what I think it is. but it takes it takes a few steps for me to get there.
The dawning realization.
Yes. So if you ever see me mad, that it takes me a while to get there. Anyway.
So a tangent on top of the tangent.
Yeah,
but
tangent, it's lovely. I love it.
People ask me, how is it that I didn't figure out that I was trans until I was 48?
Okay.
And the answer is, I had figured out that I was trans when I was 11. I just didn't decide it was safe to come out until I was 48.
Right.
But ironically, somehow I didn't figure out that I was actually truly face blind until 51. So go figure. And it's been, seriously, my whole life. It's not like a new thing. I have this one particular memory when I was 12 years old, where I was going to meet somebody that I hadn't seen in 3 months, and I was terrified that I was not going to recognize him.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful when he came running up to me because he recognized me.
Oh, great.
That meant that I didn't have to recognize him.
Yeah. Totally. No, I've had that temporarily just because sometimes my eyesight hasn't been great. I had to get some surgery. It was not LASIK, by the way. It was something else. And so sometimes I wouldn't see people when I was at school, at HDS, for instance. And so people, I don't know if they thought I was rude or something, but I just, couldn't really see their face that well. Even though I recognize faces, if I'm close to them, I could see them. But when they were at a distance, I was like, oh, I don't know who that is, So, yeah. Oh, well.
So yeah, you learn about yourself throughout your whole life.
That's right.
One should hope.
That's right. There's all kinds of things I'm still working on, too. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So this work has been really fun because the different people who've been reading it have been giving me different feedback.
Oh, good.
That different people are getting different things out of it.
Oh, good.
Some people are like, wow, this is like a textbook in how to do activism. And other people are like, wow, I learned so much about different types of cooperativism and different restorative economies.
Yes.
And other people are like, how much of the magic that you put in there is like real Kabbalah? So I'm having just a blast.
Well, probably all that's in there. I'm imagining that all that's in there. So people are reading it and getting what they need from it.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's awesome. That's actually when I make artwork, sometimes people try to really pin down something that it means instead of just taking it in as it is for them. Like they feel like they need to voice it to me or something like that, which is fine, I guess. But, as a visual artist, pinning words to things sometimes isn't helpful for me as an artist. I just want people to take it in however that they want to. More private. Maybe I'm just more private or something. I don't know. But
I love hearing what people get out of my writing, especially when it turns out that they got something out of my writing that I didn't know that I put there.
Yeah.
Then I'm just like, oh, wow.
Well, it is almost like a textbook because you're trying to figure out what's going on with you, right? And I don't know if this is like a hopeful project, like you're trying to get back some kind of hope or something, or some
that really is
verve.
How it started it.
Yeah, I can tell you that's happened many times in my life. That's why I take very long breaks from activism, and I just do volunteer work for a while, like working with dogs or whatever.
Yeah,
cooking at a soup kitchen or whatever I'm doing, and then I find something that's going on, and I'm like, oh well, I have enough energy now to address something, and I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So in as much as it is a sigil, it has actually been working in my life. For instance, one of the plot points.
So instead of just it going out, it is working for you.
It is doing both.
Okay.
It's both and.
Great.
One of the ways in which it has worked for me is that I really am learning from the characters. I'm sure that the information is somehow buried in my subconscious.
That's funny that you're learning from the characters that you made.
Right. And I'm sure that the information is buried in my subconscious somehow, right?
Sure.
But the process of sort of having conversations with the characters through the fiction brings stuff to the fore and makes me go, Oh, yes, I guess I could do that. Oh, that is the way to solve that problem.
Right.
Let me go do that.
Yeah. What comes to mind is when you're having a really intimate conversation with somebody, for instance, and you make a mistake, within that conversation. And that's a painful point, but you can also get like past that, or maybe you have some embarrassment or shame about that point, but you realize it, whereas before it was maybe unconscious or something,
right?
Something you're just carrying around with you all the time. But then when you're with somebody that cares about you or that you care about, then it comes up and you can deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been really fun, and it's also one of the things that's been fun about it.
Sure.
And this actually brings it back to the religion thing.
Okay.
Is that so often in this culture, everything is like Christianized.
Sure.
Even atheism is like Christianized atheism.
Or like people who are claimed, pointing the fingers at them, calling them Satanists.
Right.
Just because they're contrarian or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people don't understand is that all religion is not like Christianity. Mm-hmm. And this image that there's like some Judeo-Christian blob, it's not true.
Yeah.
And so this story is very deeply Jewish in that like Jewish culture just kind of suffuses all the corners. It's just all over the place in sometimes very obvious ways and sometimes just little subtle ways. Like when they're talking about, we're going to have meat right now and we're going to have cheese pizza later on tonight. How many hours do you go between meat and cheese?
Okay.
Do you have a 6-hour rule or do you have a 3-hour rule? Oh my God. You go by the 3-hour rule. Okay, great. You can have pizza with us tonight.
So there's little cultural touchstones in
like
there.
Little cultural touchstones.
Yeah.
And like when a lot of times chapters begin with the self-insert character, Uriel, waking up in the morning. And so when he wakes up in the morning, he says his morning prayers. Okay. And so there's like that very first morning prayer, the start of it is like in there.
Yeah.
And
this reminds me of Octavia E. Butler's writing, where you start to read it and because science fiction is often so white, right? That is the assumption that's made when she talks about African American people, her characters being African American. It's like it puts you, it throws you suddenly to understanding, the richness of the world or the universe, instead of just thinking it's white people out in the future in space or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not all one homogenized culture. Yeah. Progress does not mean that we're all going to be the same.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. If you think of the progress of evolution, evolution sort of by default goes for more and more diversity, and every time diversity gets cut back, it immediately starts diversifying again.
That's right.
So progress is not homogeneity. Progress is actually more diversity. So
yeah. Okay, so we took a little break there, and I was wondering, we've talked a lot about your activism and how you are kind of, finding a pathway back to it after some depression with your that was another project, the nonfiction that you were writing.
The fiction.
Yeah. Or the fiction,
It's a serial fiction.
Yeah.
Which,
do you have a title for it, by the way?
So the website is Crow's World.
Okay.
But I'm sort of working on a story arc right now, which I call Chasing Crows.
Okay.
Which, when it's done, I might turn into a novel of its own.
I love corvids in general. Yeah, we have a lot of ravens up by where I live in Fairbanks, and I just find them fascinating just in general. And, of course, there's deep spiritual connections all over the world for corvids because they're so smart and they just cause a lot of trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to do after I finish this particular story cycle is I want to write sort of like the prequel, the thing that this is a fake fan fiction of, kind of.
Okay.
That would like explain more about why this group of sort of superheroes who've become collectivist champions, why they're called the Crows, and the
I love that you're making, like, I just got to say, kind of like this collectivist story, because so much of everything is like the one man that's gonna solve everything and go out there, so it's so great that you're really delving into collectivism, which people think is just such a nasty word, but it's just working together, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the reason that people find it a nasty word or a scary thing comes back to hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
and when you've been hurt, it's hard to trust, and it's hard to act in a kind and trusting way.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to do that collective work without also doing a lot of healing work.
Yeah, and also a lot of sort of collectivist or mutualist kind of experiments, you might say. Experiment, I don't know. It's kind of a weird word to use, but sometimes it's like that because you're doing something that's radical, that's different from the greater society. Sometimes they fail, right? Because all of our weaknesses come out when you're living very close together and working with other people, and you're trying to build something maybe on consensus or a different kind of model than just voting, and whoever the majority is, well, you get to do what you want even if it's hurtful. If you're doing something different than that, all of people's stuff comes up. The racism, the misogyny, the anti-trans stuff, like all that stuff still comes out, because we're all people, and that it's unfortunately part of who we are in this culture.
Yeah.
It comes out.
And even if you live in a culture where that kind of cooperativist action is the norm.
Like where?
So I worked with a guy, Hugo, I can't think of his last name right now. His father is the chief of the Cofán nation in Ecuador.
Okay.
I don't know if he's still the chief of the Cofán nation, but he was when I was working with him. Yeah. So, Hugo Lusitante, that's his name. So he talked about how in order to have a meeting about whether they were going to put in the sneaker net plan that we had, that we were calling Canoe Net, which was basically taking information, just the information that they wanted from the internet at the closest city 11 hours away by canoe back to their village, and then having like a library with a computer that people could see stuff like Wikipedia.
Okay.
In order for the people to decide, they had to discuss, like, well, what does it mean to let the outside world in and all of that.
Right.
And he was like, it was a 13-hour meeting.
Right.
And that's a culture that's used to doing this. Yeah. And it took them 13 hours to make this decision.
Yeah.
So, it's not like it suddenly gets easy just because you've been doing cooperative activities for centuries.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're thinking about this country. We're all kind of trained to compete with each other and be individualistic. So, and then there's the trust issue that you just brought up, and just problems, social problems that we're all trying to deal with, or some people are trying to deal with. Some people are reinforcing them. So you bring all that to the table or whatever, and it can be messy.
Yep.
It can be real messy. And some people think of that as failure. And sometimes it is failure. But then you pick up and you try again. That's the work, is picking yourself up and trying again.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's a lot like family and marriage or love in general. Sometimes you give up on ever having love, and you just I failed, and that's it. That's the end of it. But some people just keep working on themselves. They keep having failed relationships, but they keep working on themselves. And at some point, they hit on the right thing, and then they have this long, really healthy, wonderful relationship.
Or you can think of it as another way. You have successes that are shorter lived.
That's true. That's another possibility.
Yeah.
But I know some older couples that are now in their 70s and 80s that didn't get together until their 40s or 50s.
There you go.
And that had, really badly failed relationships before that.
Which they hopefully learned from.
Right. And to be able to listen to them talk about the path from that to that really gives me hope.
Okay, great.
As a single dude living in his son's basement.
There you go. Speaking of that, we're also in a rather small community in eastern Washington. I was just in eastern Oregon, and some people there were saying, some trans people were saying that it's actually safer for them to come up here. Even though this is an equally small community that's agriculturally based, like the economy and stuff, it's safer here for some reason. And they said that there was more Democrats in office. That's part of it.
Well, I think part of it is also for Walla Walla specifically, as opposed to Washington State as a whole.
Sure.
Walla Walla specifically, we have Walla Walla Community College.
Okay.
And we have Whitman College.
Okay.
Whitman
I've heard before. What is that? Is that a private one?
Whitman is a private liberal arts college, and it's super, super left-leaning.
Okay.
Like, in terms of the student body.
Yeah, I've heard about it before. Yeah. I probably have known people who've gone there or something.
They're, like, really wealthy, liberal people.
Yes.
Which, comes with its pros and its cons.
Yes. Yeah.
Just saying.
It does. It really does.
And, and then also, of course, they're college age, so they're also young, very liberal, rich people. Yeah. But, giving them some pokes in the ribs, actually, that they are one of the reasons why this area is as blue as it is, or as purple as it is.
But the town I just came from, La Grande, also has a university. But still, the culture of the place is much redder, let's say, much more conservative than it is here. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is.
I don't know. I mean, if you go up to Pullman and Moscow, an interesting, weird dichotomy there is that there's Washington State University in Pullman and University of Idaho. Border. In Idaho.
They're right next to each other. You just go across the street, basically.
And yeah, it's a beautiful 8-mile walk on a really nicely maintained path. Okay. That you can go roller skating or biking or anything as well. It's really nice, actually. But Pullman is super... Well, not super right-wing. Compared to the rest of Washington State, it's right-wing.
Okay.
And Moscow, Idaho is left-wing compared to the rest of Idaho.
Yeah. Yeah, my understanding of Moscow is, because I've known people who've gone to school there, and graduate school, is that it's the flagship of Idaho, like the flagship, research university. So, and it's kind of isolated. It's kind of like... Snake River Valley, kind of out there, so it's interesting that it's like this bright blue spot kind of, out there.
I used to live in Moscow, and I love Moscow, Idaho.
Yeah.
I love it. I wouldn't live there now because of the laws in Idaho in general right now are getting scary for trans people.
Right.
So, but
speaking about Walla Walla, though, so it's the municipal government is liberal, let's say, more liberal.
Yeah, it's mixed-ish, but yeah, it's more
in a
liberal,
more liberal state.
Right.
Okay.
And there are plenty of very red towns around us, and in fact, the Tri-Cities, Kennewick, Pasco, Richmond. Richland, okay, are just over there, and they're actually much more conservative, but that's also because that's the home of a national laboratory, and
you're talking about Hanford.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Hanford and, well, there's Hanford, and there's also a national research laboratory to this day that exists there. That isn't glowing the way that Hanford does.
Yeah, look up Hanford, y'all. It's a high level nuclear storage facility, and they have basically containers there that are burping, and they don't know what's in them. Like they always send out they have all these scholarships for like new engineers to go out there and get your education paid for if you monitor these strange glowing things like you're saying. It's set yourself up for life for cancer, I guess. But
it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
But anyway, because of that, they have a long history of like federal government control stuff, which
and
also
heavy
feeds into
militarism and
exactly.
Right.
So so that kind of explains some of the conservatism over there.
Okay.
Over here, it's interesting. When I got here, I didn't know that there were a lot of queer people here. I wouldn't have guessed that there were a lot of queer people.
Are there?
There are surprisingly a lot of queer people here. So the synagogue that I go to, which is the only synagogue in town, it's got a gay president of the board of directors.
Okay.
And when I called him up to tell him that I was about to start medically transitioning, and I was, a little bit concerned how...
Because you're kind of a lay leader, or you're going towards... how would you describe that?
So I am a lay leader in the community, and I'm also studying towards rabbinic ordination.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I am not technically in a rabbinic seminary at the moment.
Yeah.
I am going to a yeshiva, which is kind of like seminary, but the yeshiva that I go to does not have an ordination path, but I am working on getting into an official ordination path at the moment.
And when we were off camera, you were saying that you have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. So I don't lead every service at our synagogue, but I do lead the majority of them. And for like high holidays and stuff, there are 3 of us that lead things together because they are big and long, and nobody should have to do that all by themselves anywhere. Your voice will... which, speaking of voices, that's been one of the funny things through this as my...
Because you have to sing.
Yes. And there was a point there where I couldn't sing at all.
Right.
Like, all I could do was croak.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, because when you go from a certain register to another and you're taking testosterone, what happens, at least for me, I would try to sing in my former register, and my voice would just stop.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't work anymore.
It's like if you're playing on a piano and there's some chords that are cut.
Yeah.
And you go, and it's plunk, 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 plunk. There's no sound there.
Stops. Yeah, it's so weird. Or unplug something, unplug this and you can't hear anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It is really, really weird. So I've had to do a lot of work on getting and keeping a singing voice, and from week to week I kind of make light of it myself so that nobody else will feel bad about being like, what's wrong with his voice?
Yeah, it's not like in Christian churches where it's like everybody's kind of drowning each other out, and you don't hear a single voice or whatever. I'm imagining, my understanding is that there's a cantor oftentimes, so you're kind of leading the service, right?
Right.
You're singing the parts, and then maybe there's a call and response, I don't know, but your voice would be out there to be listened to specifically. So
there are some prayers where everybody is singing together, and there are some things where just the person who's leading,
right.
Which in some synagogues there is a cantor that is like their full-time job is doing music stuff.
Yes.
In other places it's just whoever is leading the prayers. Interestingly enough, people think that that's like the rabbi's job, and really traditionally, like historically, that was never the rabbi's job. Like the rabbi might do it from time to time, but the rabbi is really there to teach and to help people understand the rules of the road, so to speak, and also to serve as a judge when people have conflicts.
Okay.
So like rabbinical ordination is really about becoming a qualified judge.
Okay. So kind of an administrative role.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Although, in American communities, a lot of times people are like, oh, we want a rabbi to lead this service. And it's like, actually, what you really want is a cantor to lead this service, because what you want is the nice music.
Okay. Okay.
Rabbis don't actually have to have good singing voices. Cantors do.
Right. Because, what I'm understanding of the Jewish tradition is that there's a lot of study.
There's a lot of study.
Right. So you're studying and you're not necessarily singing.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things, we were kind of talking about this off camera, one of the differences between Jewish culture and Christian culture is often like, this is the way it is. Why is it like that? Well, because it's that way.
Right.
Whereas Jewish tradition is, this is the way it is. Well, why is it like that? Well, here are 20 commentaries, each of which will give you a different aspect of why they think it should be one way or the other, and then let's take 3 hours to argue each of the different sides,
right? And
until you either agree with me or disagree with me.
It's so lovely. I mean, it's a conversation through history, because you're reading these books, these commentaries on various passages of the Tanakh or of history that go back thousands of years. I mean, it's so rich. It's so rich.
Yeah, the Talmud, one of the things, people will pull a quote from the Talmud and be like, see how terrible the Talmud is? And it's like, no, you're missing the whole point. The thing that's happening in the Talmud is that they're taking vastly different sides of different disagreements and putting them all on the page.
Yeah, right.
And that includes the stupid, horrible stuff. This one rabbi said this idiotic thing, and we recorded it so that you had the full conversation.
Sure.
So you can find all sorts of idiotic things in there.
Right. It's not prescriptive.
It's not prescriptive.
It's not telling you to do that dumb thing.
Right.
It's showing you what the dumb thing is.
Yes. Yeah. And showing you also why this guy, what his argument for the dumb thing was.
Yeah.
And then what the other people's argument against the dumb thing was.
Right, because these things come up again and again and again through history because we're people.
Exactly.
We're people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I love about the Talmud is that it's like you're getting to have a conversation, like you're getting to sit at the table with these people, because you're seeing their ancient argument on paper, and then you're seeing somebody a couple hundred years later adding to the argument with their own ideas, and then there's another layer a couple generations after that, and then you come along with your study partner and you are then adding your own layer on top of that.
That's so beautiful. I love that.
It's fun. It's really, really fun. So yeah, it's a really nice community here in that.
Are you active in the LGBT community here? You said it was sizable for such a small place.
I mean, I don't know. I am not quite sure what qualifies as active. I show up to queer cheer.
Okay.
On whichever.
Yeah. What is
Thursday.
there to do here in Walla Walla?
There's like a one Thursday a month we all get together at a brew pub.
Okay.
And hang out and talk.
Sure.
So I show up to that.
Is this trans people or LGBT?
LGBT.
Okay.
QIA 2S plus.
Everybody.
All the peoples. So that's fun. And it's been one of the ways that I've gotten to meet some more people that aren't just in the synagogue.
Yeah. Do you talk about local politics? Is it mostly just a social event? What?
It's a social event, and people talk about whatever their, interests or whatever is.
Sure. Dating prospects, possibly.
Possibly. Yes.
just passing through.
All the all the gossip about each other, like even though we're all sitting at the same table, we're like literally gossiping about like, oh yeah, did you know that they went out on this date? You totally should go ask them about that.
Right. The funnest gossiping I ever did was with a deaf woman. Because I knew a little bit of sign language because I had taken some classes. It was just baby sign, just a little bit. But we would basically be gossiping about the other people who didn't know sign language while we were right next to them. It was so much fun. Oh my God. Oh, it was the best thing ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Or saying how cute they were or whatever. It was just great. I loved it.
Fun.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun. Anyway. So we were talking about Walla Walla, and you're being a lay leader who is going towards being a rabbi, or you're not quite sure yet.
So yeah. I mean, hopefully someday I will be a rabbi. It'll happen someday.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. Well,
I
one
may be
day
like
at a time.
60 or something by the time it happens, but it'll happen eventually.
Yeah. I'm pivoting careers right now. Not like I ever had a career. Really, I've just had jobs. But I'm actually going towards something else, and I'm in my mid-50s. And it's completely different. We're still alive.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're still alive.
And as long as I'm still moving around and able to do stuff, like I might as well do, enjoy it and do stuff that I enjoy and do stuff that's beneficial in the world, as long as I can.
Yeah. So the current activism that you're doing, it sounds like it's more like a lot of internal work. And you're also kind of helping other people with their internal work, with the fiction that you're writing and that sort of thing. And that is activism. This is another form of activism. Yeah. There's all kinds of different kinds of activism. And I think this is a valid one, right? Because we don't see this kind of story out here. Is there anything else that you're kind of working yourself up to?
Well, one of the things that I am actively doing right now is teaching.
Okay.
So it started out as just teaching like private bar and bat mitzvah students and kids who wanted to learn Hebrew in town. Okay. And I've got a small group of adults that I teach privately as well. And now I'm also teaching
And that's community building.
It's a kind of community building as well.
Yeah.
And then at Walla Walla Community College, I'm now teaching over there in their continuing education program. Great. So I do not have a master's degree.
Great. Yeah.
So there's I did not expect there to be a pathway for me to be teaching at a community college.
Some people who are specialized in particular things, like you are, Hebrew and other things, they make exceptions for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm also right now at least. This may change as we manage to jump through a few bureaucratic hoops. Yeah. But at the moment, I'm not teaching anything that is like transfer credit.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. It's only.
Or there could be a teacher of record who oversees you. Sometimes that is the case.
Right.
Like I've done a little bit of prisoner education. And if you don't have a graduate degree, at the time I didn't, so somebody who was the teacher of record would look over what I was doing.
Yeah. So when I've been a guest lecturer at different places, there's always been some other professor that was in charge of stuff. And
that really opens things up too, because I've known artists who've been in that kind of role. I think it really enriches a college environment to do that.
So I love teaching. I've always loved teaching.
Yeah.
I used to coach figure skating.
My goodness, where'd that come from?
I know, right?
Figure skating, what?
Totally out of left field.
What?
What? Even weirder, it gets way weirder.
Okay.
I taught figure skating in Tel Aviv. Underneath a circus tent, and the ice had 3 poles in the middle of the ice, so you could tell my skaters at competitions because they subconsciously were avoiding the poles in the middle of the ice.
Sure. Oh my goodness. So just we're spinning around that particular place. Wow. A movie needs to be made about that. Like a short little film. Do it. Do it.
Absolutely. So one of the things I love teaching, things that people think are difficult.
Okay.
And that they're like scared to do.
Okay.
Right? One of my sort of superpowers.
I like that too. Like teaching adults who are scared of math.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing ever.
That is so much fun.
That's my favorite thing. Yeah.
So one of my superpowers in teaching ice skating was being a fat kid.
Okay.
Right? I mean, a fat grown-up, but still, whatever.
Yes,
being the fat kid. These people going like, oh, I can't do that. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too whatever. And I'm like, did you not see the double jumps I just did?
Right.
Please, you have no excuse. Come on. Get out here.
Right. And everybody can be graceful.
Right.
Everybody can be graceful. Yes.
Yeah. And so being able to, like, first off, break people's stereotype of what being able to do the hard thing is.
Sure.
And then being able to bring them out and take something that they thought was going to be too hard for them and teach them how to do it quickly.
Yeah.
And then you've got them addicted. Then you've got them hooked. And now you can actually take them into things that become harder and harder to learn. But it doesn't feel like it's impossible because they've already done several things that they thought were impossible that turned out to be not that hard at all.
Yeah, some small successes to build on.
Right. And so once you get into the really hard stuff, it's like, this isn't impossible. It's just as possible as the other stuff. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. That's all.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the attitude that I take, whether I'm teaching Hebrew or whether I'm teaching computer programming or whatever.
Well, I think a lot of people get caught in that too. Like, we have this thing in this culture where you have to be an expert to be able to do something that's artistic or, you know, like playing the piano or whatever. Well, what are you doing with that? Why are you taking those lessons? Do you think you're going to be a professional at some point? Like, there always has to be some productive reason,
right?
You know, some economic reason or career reason that you're doing something. Well, maybe you're just enjoying it.
Right. And there's that, like, well, how are you going to make money doing that?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, you know,
maybe I won't.
Amazingly, you can make money at all sorts of things that
or
you don't think that you can make money at.
Or maybe you won't.
And also, amazingly, there's a lot of value in the world that is not attached to money.
That's right. Absolutely.
And value and money are not the same things.
No. Just look at Twitter. Cost $44 billion. What a piece of shit. And the CEO, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I keep barely holding on to being on these platforms, I swear.
I know, right?
It's like, I want to hold on to the bitter end, but it's so horrible. It's like,
it hurts. So back to the synagogue and the queer community thing. So I called up Oliver to say, like, hey, I'm gonna
this is the gay CEO.
Yeah, the gay president of the board of directors of the synagogue, right? So just to let you know.
No, sorry.
He's married. Sorry.
Okay.
He's married, and their son just had his bar mitzvah.
Oh, nice!
About a month ago.
Great,
pretty cool.
Cool.
Cool. So I called him up and was like, "Yeah, I'm about to start testosterone, just so you know." Because at this point, like, I was already leading services and stuff like that, and I knew that this was going to, you know, affect things, both in terms of my ability to sing, and also people were going to notice that there were changes.
Sure.
As I'm standing up in front of them.
Yeah, how long have you been on testosterone, by the way?
A little over 2 years, like 2.5 years.
Okay, so pretty new.
Yeah. So he was like, oh yeah, that's no problem. You know, we've already got 4 trans people in our community.
There you go.
And I was like, wait, what? We've only got 32 families in the entire synagogue.
Yeah.
How do we have 4 trans people?
Yeah. Well, we're everywhere.
Yep. and also, I had no idea that we had 4 trans people until that moment.
Well, also, and you know, that points to as well that some people are private. Some people don't go through a social or a medical transition, but they're still trans. They still have that identity. So,
yeah. Yeah, and, some people, if you know them after they've gone through sort of like all of the medical stuff and the social stuff, and there's no reason for the topic to come up.
Right.
There's just no reason to know, even if they're not like intending to go stealth.
Yeah.
It's just not a topic that came up.
Yeah. It's not something that they want to. Oh, hi. Hi. I'm a trans person or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But then also you brought up the word stealth. There are some people who are stealth. And sometimes that's for privacy reasons.
Sometimes it's for safety.
Sometimes it's for safety. Sometimes it's just somebody's identity, too. Like, they're very binary. Like, they transitioned, like somebody like me, to become a man, and that was it. Like, they don't have a trans community sort of identity, right? So they're kind of separate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
There's all kinds of trans people out there.
For me, had I transitioned as a kid, I think that I probably would have gone stealth very early on, because I just identified more as being a guy.
Sure.
And like if I could just slide into life like that and go on and not worry about it, I probably would have. And I think that may have come with some bad baggage as well, like some toxic masculinity, because hilariously long before I transitioned publicly, I was frequently accused of having toxic masculinity problems.
Okay.
Which, at the time I would laugh it off, but in hindsight, like, no, actually they were problems. It was doesn't matter that I was presenting as a woman while being toxically masculine.
Yeah, I have actually seen that in cisgendered women as well. I often see that in, and I hate to say this, but women who are successful in the business world or politically, oftentimes they exhibit the characteristics of men who are also of that position, right? Which I don't like. I don't like that.
Yeah,
that's not somebody that, the men or the women, those are characteristics I wouldn't want to emulate.
Right, and my perspective from the inside going through all of that was that that's what I needed to do in order to not drown. Right?
Yeah. To be strong.
To be able to do these things.
Yeah.
It's not that I was trying to put anybody else down. Right. It was that I was trying not to.
And you're also very smart. And you know how to organize things. And you have a lot of skills. Right? So that is a dangerous mix. It's a little bit.
It can be, yes.
Yeah, you really have to watch yourself. You have to, like, I was talking to Alaska Native activists recently. They do environmental stuff, and they brought up that people have to have humility, right? So I'm trying to keep that word in my mind all the time. Even though I'm smart, I'm driven, my heart is there. You still have to keep humility. There's always something else that you have to learn, or you have to move back and give other people space. You can't take over, even though you're the one that has the skills, or you think you are. Right. You're the one who can solve the problem. But you have to cultivate that humility that it's not all about you.
It also, as many skills as you have and as great as you may be, you can't solve anything all by yourself.
Yeah,
you can only solve things in community.
That's part of the work, right? That's that other part. Like, it's a community. It's not just you.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is a patriarchy in general problem. As a person presenting as a woman, through my late teens and 20s especially, people dismissed me.
Yes.
People, I was sexually harassed in all the ways that people get sexually harassed, but also every time that I would start to rise up in anything, somebody would take a hammer and, push me back down again. Right? And so some of my, like, toxic masculinity qualities were about not letting them... push me back down.
It's like a coping skill
Right.
But it can also be like not so good coping skill.
Exactly. It's not a healthy coping skill.
Right.
And I think that had I been, presenting as male in those same places, that a similar thing could have happened, because you see this happen with men, that other men are policing their masculinity and policing their place in the hierarchy, right? And so in order to rise up the hierarchy, you have to do certain things to prove that you're big and strong, right? And so I think I would have been just as much at risk of doing those things.
Yeah. Okay.
Presenting as a man.
Yeah, right.
And it could have actually been more damaging in the world.
Yeah.
Because presenting as a man and people not realizing that I was trans, I would have had more power and therefore more opportunity to do more damage.
Right. Well, what we're talking about, too, points to the fact that this stuff is systemic. Like, people throw that word around a lot, and I don't think a lot of people know what it means if they don't have these kinds of conversations, about how we're all caught in it.
Yeah.
We're all caught in this racist, patriarchal, competitive, system. And that's why people bring this up, that it's systemic problems. And so we have to do systemic change. We have to do individual change, but also systemic change.
Right. It takes all of us doing a lot of individual work to be able to work together to make the systemic work happen.
Right.
And I think that one of the good things, one of the positive things about transitioning late in life is that I do have a really clear sort of hindsight on all those experiences.
I was going to ask you that. If there was something that you valued as somebody who is physically transitioning later in life.
That is the number one thing that I actually do value, is that I am able to see different perspectives that I would not actually have. And one thing that's been really fascinating, as more people are relating to me as a man, which at this point is still not 100%. I still get ma'amed a lot in the street and stuff, but more and more people are simply just accepting me as a man, and it's becoming more and more easy to have those conversations about what it's like for women.
Yeah. Because you have access to those men's ears now.
Right, exactly. And even knowing that I'm trans, they I don't know, somehow have more trust in the words that I'm saying about what that experience is like than they did when they saw me as being a woman.
Goodness gracious. So we were talking about a bit about patriarchy and systemic change and that sort of thing. And, when you think about system change, like it feels overwhelming, right? There's always so much to do. There's so much to do personally, but then there's also so much to do with our communities and also with the country and globally. I mean, there's so many things. We have so many challenges coming, like water, fires, everything. It's coming, right? It's happening right now. So I guess, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who wants to get involved in activism? What kind of concrete things can people do? Because you just, you're kind of like this powerhouse, with activism, and you have a lot of experience. So any words of wisdom on that?
Yeah, so there's a few things. 1 second. Okay, so there's a few things that I would give as advice. The first one...
Advice is tricky, but I'm asking you for it.
Right. Yeah. And the first piece of advice is to remember that you are not doing this alone. That if you find the one thing that you're good at and can do right now, you may have many things that you can do, and today you're doing this one thing, and tomorrow you're doing that one thing. But this one thing that you can do right now, and find the other people for whom doing that one thing is going to support them.
Okay.
In doing their part.
Okay.
or find the other people who are doing other things that are going to support the one thing that you can do.
Okay. All right. So it always involves getting together with some other people.
Right.
And working it out.
And it doesn't have to be in person getting together. It doesn't like
Right.
there are so many ways of doing work together.
Young people are all over Discord doing all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next thing is, how do I find people?
Right.
Right? So you can find lots of people on the internet, but one difficulty with that is that you can feel really, really isolated if you have a million friends online.
Right.
And you have many, many conversations, but you don't have the in-person piece of it.
And I feel like some of that stuff can be really distracting from what's going on around you in real life, right? Because you get involved in what Trump's doing. Okay, well, yeah, let's all be upset about what Trump is doing or whatever. But what's happening in your own community?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
That's what you can actually do stuff about right now, today, you know?
So in a big city, there's probably more ways to find out who is doing the kind of activism that you care about. Right? Like, you can find that on
look
Facebook.
Up, like,
you can find that on the website.
Socialists or leftists or Black Lives Matter or queer something.
Right. And then find out who they are online and then plug in with them locally.
Yeah. Hold on. It's the smoke that's in the air. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So, how do you find people in a more rural area?
Yeah.
So, pretty much wherever you are, there's going to be some town-ish place near you where people do gather.
Yeah.
Right? Going into town is always a thing.
Sure.
So find out who is doing the active things in your town.
Okay.
So for me, here in Walla Walla, one of the things that I experienced was that I could not figure out how to plug into any of the activism at all because I don't go to one of the churches. My synagogue is very small.
Sure. And you take care of a lot of kids during the day and
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't go to the university. I hadn't started working at the college yet.
Right.
So, like, there were all these things that I was not connected to, so I didn't know how to get in.
Yeah.
But what would happen would be that I would be out driving and see, trans support, like trans rights support rally downtown, and
like
I'd
a
be
flyer
like,
for that, or
like 10 people
the actual event.
Yeah, 10.
Okay,
literally, because we're a small town, right?
Sure.
10 people standing there on Main Street with signs and flags going trans rights,
awesome.
And I'd be like, who the heck organized this and how do I find it? And of course I'm driving, so I can't stop and go ask them or whatever.
So it takes some risk or whatever to notice, for one thing, to notice the activism that is going on, and then to take a risk and find these people and actually talk to them.
Right. And so what I figured out was if you can kind of work your way backwards to figure out who's organizing these things. Mm-hmm. So in that particular case, what I did was I went through kind of archives of the local newspaper.
Okay.
To find the newspaper reporting about these little, rallies and whatnot on different topics that I cared about.
Yeah.
And then who did they say organized it?
There you go.
And then
who was profiled in the interview? Or
exactly. Mm-hmm. And then I worked my way backwards to figuring out how to connect with those people.
Great. Yeah.
So
you reverse engineered it there.
I reverse engineered it. And, as an outsider in a small town, you kind of got to.
That's a thing, too, because you're coming in, and I'm encountering this in this project, right? You're coming in and you're a stranger, and people are protective. They're protective sometimes of their space or their power relationship or whatever, but then they're also just protective of the activism that they're actually doing, or they're protective because who knows who you are.
Right.
Who knows, Yeah. Yeah. All those things can happen.
Are you an asshole or an infiltrator?
That's right. Or, or maybe you want to replace me in my role, or
right.
A lot of I've heard a lot of complaints up in Alaska that sometimes white people come in and they try to take over, in initiatives that are led by Alaska Native people. And, no, you can join in, possibly,
Exactly.
but, understand who you are and, whose land it is, etc.
Exactly. And that's another piece of this that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Find the thing that you can do and connect in with other people. Don't try to take over what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Don't try to run the roosts, right?
Yeah, or duplicate it, but you can do it so much better.
Right.
I don't think so.
Don't start a whole new organization to do something that another organization already does, unless you have already attempted to work with them and there are serious systemic reasons why you need to split off.
Right.
Those things do happen.
That is valid.
But you absolutely should try with the existing community first.
Yeah.
And even if you do end up having to split off and start another community, one of the things that I highly recommend is continuing to try to find ways to cooperate. With the possibility that you may become reunited as a single group again.
Yeah.
And even if you don't...
Or just a new initiative.
Right. And even if you don't become one, by continuing to cooperate in whatever place that you can cooperate, you're building the energy instead of... diluting it.
Yeah, there's also there's the dilution, but then there's also the energy that gets taken up by enmity, right? Oh, your group and my group, and oh, you're not as radical, or whatever is going on.
Right.
That stupid, middle school level maturity stuff. But it's, adults do it and activists do it, even though, we're supposed to, be examining ourselves and all that, but it still happens. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else on that topic?
I think that's okay. About it.
Yeah. So working with people and finding what you're good at and adding to the effort.
Yep. And also remember, no matter how much you're into your activism, do take breaks.
Yes.
So people always talk about this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. But it's not just a marathon, it's a relay marathon.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You get to pass on the baton and go rest and come back.
Yeah, and I gotta say, and this is a warning too, a lot of people our age get really burnt out. And some of them, they become so burnt out or so disillusioned that they completely give up or even go the other way and become really bitter.
Yeah.
And don't want to be in any community, or they also get sick sometimes, like physically ill. Like it seems, I don't know if this is the appropriate word, but like almost an epidemic of autoimmune diseases among older activists because they just burn the candle at both ends and don't take care of themselves.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've learned through the COVID thing is that actually when you are sick, if you don't rest, you increase the chances that you're going to have the ongoing autoimmune problems after the virus. And that is just as true for the common cold as it is for COVID. They may look different, but it's still true. So when you feel not at your best, whether it's an emotional thing or whether it's a physical thing, you need to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And
listen to people when they tell you that, because oftentimes it's risky to say that to somebody, and they do it out of love to tell you that something is wrong. So take care of yourself,
Yeah. And those of us who do have the energy too, we also need to remember to help support the others who are doing that, taking care of themselves.
Right.
We also need
don't shame them.
Yeah, don't shame them. Don't be like, why aren't you in the front lines with me?
The revolution. Well, okay, but we all have to get there. We all have to get there.
Exactly. We all have to get there. We all have our part to play.
Yes.
And,
it's a broader justice issue too, because I'm thinking about like people who are disabled who are also activists who are out there, or and it also brings together community when it's just not one person leading a charge. If you move back, see, I keep wanting to say step back, but that's not good language. If you move back, you allow others to grow and to take on more leadership positions, to be able to take the mic, to speak, to grow their skills.
Right.
Yeah. Grow the skills of the community by moving back.
Yep. Yeah, and if you see somebody who's hesitant to step forward, offer to help them gain the skills and the confidence to take the mic, and then hand them the mic and step back. Or
That's right.
Move back.
I always find that, like, it's that quiet person, they often have something to say. But they're just shy, or they haven't been given the chance. And I want that person to speak. Give that person some room. Do it. Anyway. Yeah. I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this is awesome.
It was great.
It's so awesome, meeting somebody who's such a experienced activist, and you've kind of been through a lot. You've been through a lot with that, and seems like you're kind of in recovery from some of it too. Yeah. And that's a long process.
It is.
And you're modeling how to do that in a way that is healthy or good for you. You're working through it with this fiction, and you're helping other people at the same time. It's kind of beautiful. And you're doing this religious work. Even though you're not a professional, you're still doing the work in your religious community. And yeah. And here we are in Walla Walla. Yeah, we're everywhere, and we're just doing it
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
Bye,
Take
y'all.
Care. Bye.
All right. Cool.